Fox 35 News Alert. An enormous amount of evidence released today in the case of the deadly shooting of Trayvon Martin. That evidence includes this video of Trayvon buying the iced tea and Skittles he had on his person just moments later when he died. There are hundreds of pages of evidence as well as audio recordings and videotapes.
And some of that includes witnesses who say it was actually Trayvon Martin who was attacking George Zimmerman. An awful lot to go through. We want to turn things over right now. Cale Ramaker and Valerie Boy in the newsroom, guys.
Well, we are talking about an enormous amount of evidence. It was released at 5 o'clock. It's kept much of the newsroom busy all night. A lot of stuff to get through. You mentioned the audio tapes. We're talking 7 hours of audio that was released earlier today, but also there is surveillance video, as you saw. There are police reports, witnesses' statements. I'm going to get to the autopsy on Trayvon Martin in a moment and have more specifics on that. But let's talk about the witness reports, witnesses who are able to help in the investigation. That stuff was released as well, and Valerie Boy, my colleague, going over that.
That's right. It's very interesting, Cal. You know, witnesses told officers that it was Trayvon Martin who was punching George Zimmerman, and for the first time we see new photos of Zimmerman's injuries right before the shooting.
New pictures of George Zimmerman reveal that the 28-year-old suspect suffered a broken nose and deep cuts to his head. These are injuries which Zimmerman says Trayvon Martin caused during a fight on February 26. Zimmerman told police he shot and killed Martin in self-defense with his 9mm semi-automatic Luger. Prior to the shooting, 17-year-old Martin was caught on surveillance at a nearby 7-Eleven buying Skittles and iced tea. Documents state he had $40 in his pocket as he headed back to his father's friend's place on Retreat View Circle. That's when Zimmerman called 911, concerned Martin was acting suspicious. Shortly after that, a fight occurred. According to witness statements, it was Zimmerman calling out for help.
He was a Hispanic guy with a red sweatshirt on the ground, yelling out help. And then, I tried to tell him, get out of here, stop or whatever. And then the one guy on top in the black hoodie was pretty much just throwing down blows on the guy, kind of MMA style.
Ground and pound, okay.
Yeah, like a ground and pound on the concrete at this point.
MMA means mixed martial arts. The officer continues with his questioning.
The person calling for help, would that been the person underneath the thing?
Yes, that was the one getting beat up, and he was the one with the red sweater on.
Okay, and the one that was shot was the one that was on top of the person that beat up.
Correct.
But Martin's girlfriend tells a different story. She told police she was on the phone with Martin when he noticed Zimmerman.
You can hear that somebody bumped Trayvon. Because I can hear the grass.
Okay, so you could hear there was something going on.
Yeah.
Like, did you hear any kind of screamings like help me or anything like that?
No.
You could hear it was Trayvon saying that?
That's why I was calling his name.
And he was saying what now?
Like, get off.
And on February 28th, Trayvon Martin's father, Tracy Martin, listened to the 911 calls. In the report, the officer states, "I asked Mr. Martin if the voice calling for help was that of his son. Mr. Martin, clearly emotionally impacted by the recording, quietly responded no."
And George Zimmerman's father told investigators the same thing. He said that he and other relatives believe it was George Zimmerman's voice on the 911 calls screaming for help. And just the other day, I had contact with Robert Zimmerman, and he couldn't talk about the case, but he did tell me he was very looking forward to this evidence coming out because he believes that this will actually clear his son.
Yeah, this is the most evidence to date, no doubt, that we've gotten. Now, there's also the autopsy, and we want to talk about that for a moment and kind of run down the highlights of the autopsy that was done on Trayvon Martin. And here's what we can tell you. The most important parts: Trayvon Martin died from a single gunshot wound to the chest. The bullet entered ½ an inch below the left nipple. It went into his right ventricle of his heart. There was no exit wound. The medical examiner also noted an abrasion on his finger and determined he was shot at, quote, intermediate range, which is described as between 1 and 18 inches. So that's pretty darn close. As for the toxicology results, Martin's blood and urine tested positive for marijuana. Now, the reports that were filed by the officers and the paramedics on the scene say they did arrive and attempt to revive Trayvon Martin, but that was very brief. He was then shortly later pronounced dead. And then, Val, another item that stands out of interest is at least one investigator who arrived on the scene said that, in his view, that this whole thing should never have happened if George Zimmerman had just waited in his car. That was just one opinion in the report.
That's correct. And another interesting point is that many people have kind of labeled George Zimmerman as a neighborhood vigilante. But in reality, both the HOA and the police department recognize him as a neighborhood watch leader.
Right, not a vigilante, but a watch leader. A difference definitely in the definition there.
Exactly.
Val, thanks. She will be back at 10:30 with more details on the information released. But for now, back to Bob and Sunny.
Kale, thank you. By the way, in the meantime, you can review more than 100 pages of the potential evidence that was released today, as well as pictures of George Zimmerman. Just go to myfoxorlando.com.